Hey everybody, happy Monday morning. Now, today we're going to be talking about the fascinating journey of becoming able to understand authentic native level content, namely podcasts. So I'm going to start by telling you a bit about the challenge of developing your comprehension skills specifically, so reading and listening. Then I'm going to talk about my own personal journey that I always go through when it comes to developing my listening comprehension skills, and specifically why podcasts are so instrumental for me personally. Then I'm going to tell you a story from something marvelous that happened to me just yesterday evening. It was such a fantastic experience and I can't wait to tell you about it. And then I'm going to step back and just talk at a more general level of a really interesting process I always go through when, reaching those really high levels of listening comprehension in a language where I can understand comfortably authentic level material. That's all coming up. I'm super excited about this video, so let's just jump in. Okay, so let's first talk a bit about the particular challenge of developing your comprehension skills. So I personally have always found that developing your comprehension skills, so reading and listening, overall is more challenging than developing my, production skills, right? So speaking and writing. And the reason for that is that I feel like the standard that you have to sort of reach for your listening and reading skills is just a lot higher than your spoken skills, for example, if you want to participate in the communication exchange. Because if you think about the speaker, so me learning German, let's say, well, all I have to do is become able to express my ideas and communicate my thoughts, explain myself, and that's really it. As long as I can do that, the native speaker is likely to understand me, right? And so even if I have mistakes and if I mumble or mess things up, I fumble my sentences, as long as I can just get to a place where I can express my ideas, then I can participate in that sort of communicative exchange. And of course, if I can get to the point where I can communicate ideas quite effectively and quite comfortably, again, even if there's loads of mistakes, if I'm comfortable and confident expressing my thoughts, well, I can have a really, really good conversation with a native speaker. However, the other side of that exchange is different. Now, if you're talking one-on-one to a native speaker, then it's easier because they have the opportunity and the ability to perhaps slow down, make themselves more understandable, more comprehensible. But once you start listening to two native speakers speaking to each other, once you start watching movies, TV shows, and listening to podcasts and radio interviews, etc., it's a whole different story because they're going to be speaking at a very, very high level. Same thing goes for reading novels. In fact, I think it's even more difficult because the range of vocabulary that is used in novels and other literature is phenomenal, right? And so if you're trying to comprehend that level of speech effectively, you need to have your skills at a pretty high level. So overall, I just want to point out that for me personally, even though I am a input-based learner overall, I do a lot of input on my journey, I still find that usually I become a fairly decent speaker of a language before I become a really, really effective listener or reader in a language. It's just the way it works. For example, in Japanese, I was already working as an interpreter actually, and I found that while I was able to understand things one-on-one and I was able to listen in and translate things, if I turned on a movie or a TV show, or if I listened to two native speakers just talking to each other really fast and they didn't know I was listening, that was still really challenging for me. And reading novels was a whole different level. And the same thing with French. I remember being a really advanced speaker of French. I could talk to people one-on-one, have fantastic conversations, but it was extremely challenging even then to understand two native speakers just going back and forth, speaking at a completely natural pace. It's always fascinated me how much more difficult that is. So now let's talk a bit about why I find that podcasts are so instrumental for my personal journey every time as I strive to really develop my comprehension skills, specifically listening comprehension. So of course, speaking to other people is a really good way of not just speaking practice, but it's also a great way to practice your listening skills. But like I said, when you do that, it's very natural for the other person, the native speaker, or maybe an advanced speaker, to sort of slow down. It's just what we do, right? If we have empathy and we can see the person we're talking to is struggling, we're gonna try to help them. But the thing is that I have found struggling is absolutely crucial, and especially with listening comprehension. I have found that by far the best way to really advance my listening skills so I can understand anything, including movies and TV shows, everything, I have to have an element of struggle. It's just essential because there's no better way to just simulate reality. The fact is that in those real life situations, very often, you're not going to be able to just get people to slow down. And so a podcast is fascinating because you could have one person speaking and it's more of a description and a narrative. But my favorite is you have this opportunity to listen in to two or more people having a perfectly natural, authentic conversation. And I have the ability to play it back multiple times, slow it down. I can transcribe it. I can study the transcript. I can learn every single word, phrase, idiom. I just absolutely love it. I can listen to it in my dead time while I'm ironing or washing the dishes or cooking, out on a walk. I just find that if I can find a really good podcast with great audio quality and a couple of really interesting people I can listen to, it's so helpful. So now I'm gonna tell you about what happened to me yesterday evening with German, and oh my God, it was such a wonderful evening. I can't describe it, but I'm gonna try. So I typically, like I said, I start looking for podcasts and things fairly early on, even when I think I'm probably not ready yet, because it's a nice way to just gauge my listening skills. And I noticed that with German, ever since I got back to the language, I haven't really been doing any dedicated listening practice. I've mostly been going through my Babbel lessons and just enjoying taking my time. And I've been doing things like my podcast interview method that we talked about last Wednesday, which, by the way, so many of you absolutely loved that method. So I highly recommend watching that video if you haven't already. And that's one way that I develop my speaking skills by myself. But so yesterday, I discovered that the lovely, wonderful people over at Easy German have actually now developed a podcast as well, and I did not know about this. So normally, Easy German for me is a YouTube series where they are videos of sort of street interviews. And so it's really just a collection of very short but authentic interactions. So I love the idea of a podcast where it's actually, 30 minutes or 1 hour long, genuine, authentic conversation. So immediately I subscribed to it. And I was scrolling through and I found an episode about design. And I thought, okay, this is me. I'm gonna give it a go. I'm gonna listen to it and see what happens. Well, in the beginning, I was not surprised. I found that I was missing a lot of words, right? And to be honest, it seemed like I was missing more words than I was actually understanding. I did certainly follow a lot of words. I was able to pick out things here and there. But if you had asked me after the first 10 seconds, the first 30 seconds, I would say even the first 1 minute, I would have told you, yeah, this is probably too hard for me. I'm definitely struggling to follow what's happening. But the thing is, I've done this before, right? And so I know that I need to give myself a chance. And so I decided to listen to the entire episode and just go on a walk. I was really enjoying myself. I just wanted to give myself a chance to just let the language wash over me. Many of you know, I always say that. It's this feeling of just the ocean waves just like washing over me, and then they kind of go back. Now, here's what's fascinating. As I got about halfway through the episode, I realized that I was actually not only following what was happening in the conversation, most importantly, I was actually enjoying the conversation, like genuinely enjoying it. Like, when you have like a physical reaction where you get this like just warm feeling. It's this lovely, pleasant feeling of enjoyment just bubbling up inside of you when you're just listening to the most delightful conversation and you're just really enjoying it. I had that feeling. I didn't follow everything, right? And I could still tell I'm missing words. As this language is flowing into my ears, I'm missing plenty of words, but somehow I was following the overall conversation and I was enjoying it. Furthermore, as I started to really get into my groove and as I was kind of getting some momentum and as the conversation went on, I did find I was actually guessing the meaning of a whole bunch of words. I remember that at one point they were talking about an app and certain subscriptions and you can order this and this gets delivered, and all these words, I was guessing them, but I was guessing them with confidence. And then as each sentence came into my ears, it was like validation or confirmation, like, yeah, it must be that must be the meaning of that word. It was so wonderful. And that brings me to the last part of this video, where I want to just tell you about the wonderful, but also mysterious process that I always go through every time when it comes to becoming able to understand authentic level podcasts. So it's basically exactly what I just described. It is remarkable. There's something that happens and it's so hard to explain, but I get to a level where, again, if I zoom in on 10 seconds or 30 seconds or 1 minute, it appears that it's too hard for me. It appears that I'm still missing, probably too many words, too much meaning, and it does feel like maybe I'm not gonna be able to follow. But I get to this point where I find if I listen to the whole episode and then I think about what just happened, I realize, no, I actually followed most of what just happened. And it feels like I shouldn't have. It feels like I missed too many words, but somehow I was able to understand the overall conversation or the overall thing. And most importantly, I enjoyed it. And that is such an exciting place to be, because to me, that is like the rocket ship of my listening comprehension skills taking off, right? Like that is the moment where I am just over the moon. And, with Easy German, it turns out that you can actually become a Patreon supporter and they'll give you transcripts to every episode of the podcast. So I immediately I spent the whole evening just relishing listening to that first episode about design. Then I found out there was actually a part 2, and it was this wonderful conversation between 3 native speakers, all speaking German at a natural pace about different aspects of design. One of them is a professional illustrator. It was just the most splendid evening. Honestly, I was out for dinner, I took a walk, I came back, I was making a cup of herbal tea, and I just knew I have to get that transcript, and this is gonna be amazing. So that's what I did. So last night I got transcripts for the first 2 episodes that I listened to, and I'm gonna be absolutely tearing those things apart. And so generally speaking, the process I go through is that I will listen to new episodes, right? So that's how I get my extensive input there. I'll listen to new episodes and just take it as it comes and try my best. But then I go back and I re-listen to my favorite episodes with a transcript, and I write down all my new phrases, new words. I scribble on things, and now in my Notion setup, many of you will have seen the table I create with all my favorite sentences and examples. I'm gonna be taking tons and tons of authentic, natural, accurate language from those podcast transcripts, and I'm gonna be putting them in my database of correct and accurate natural language, and then I can use that in my interviews I do with the podcast interview method that I gave you last Wednesday. So I just love this. I think it's so fascinating, and I had to share that with you because I've been dying to document this process for a long time of what it's like to go from not understanding a podcast to actually following it, enjoying it, and loving it. And since I'm at this amazing, exciting stage in German, but I'm at a lower level with Chinese, where I'm not there yet. With Mandarin, if I listen to an authentic podcast, it's still like mostly just really hard for me to follow. So I'm going to be documenting in both languages that process as I move towards understanding authentic content. And that's it. That's the episode for today. I would love to hear your thoughts. I really want to know whether any of you have had this exact same experience, whether you have your own way of describing it. And please let me know if you have any questions. And of course, if you enjoyed this content, please do consider liking and subscribing. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful Monday, and I'll see you back here on Wednesday for the next episode.